void of space was silent, as it always had been. But within that silence stirred something ancient, something vengeful. For 3,000 years, Earth had been nothing more than a memory, a story passed down in whispers and forgotten archives. The Galactic Council had seen to that. Earth was erased, its history scrubbed from star charts, its people scattered and broken. The Council had called it preservation of the galaxy, but for humanity, it was annihilation. Now, in the cold expanse of space, a ship moved with purpose. It was sleek and angular, crafted in secret over generations by those who had survived. The descendants of Earth's refugees had spent centuries hiding in the shadows of distant star systems, gathering strength and waiting. They had endured humiliation, lived under the Council's thumb, and rebuilt their numbers in exile. But they never forgot. Stories of Earth's destruction, of the Council's judgment, were etched into their very bones. Revenge wasn't just an idea, it was their identity. Inside the ship, the crew worked with quiet precision. They were a mix of fighters, engineers, and strategists, united by a shared goal to reclaim their lost heritage and destroy the legacy of those who had destroyed them. A young pilot sat at the helm, their fingers dancing over glowing controls, guiding the vessel closer to its destination. Beside them, a weathered veteran studied a holographic map marking the locations of long-forgotten Council strongholds. The rest of the crew moved through the corridors, checking weapons, calibrating systems, and whispering prayers to gods they barely remembered. The air buzzed with determination and tension. The Galactic Council's core worlds were heavily guarded, but humans had spent centuries learning how to move unnoticed. They had become masters of stealth, experts at exploiting the arrogance of their oppressors. The Council thought humanity was extinct, or, at the very least, irrelevant. That was their first mistake. As the ship approached the outer rim of the Council's territory, the crew prepared for what lay ahead. Their mission wasn't just about survival, it was about erasing the Council's control over the galaxy. Humanity wasn't content to return as mere survivors. They were returning as conquerors. The plan was audacious, bordering on impossible, but it had to work. For humanity, failure meant more than death. It meant the final extinction of their culture, their history, their very essence. Deep within the ship, in a dimly lit chamber, a small group gathered around a central table. A holographic projection displayed the Council's main archive, a vast repository of knowledge, history, and propaganda that spanned millennia. This archive was more than a collection of data. It was the heart of the Council's power. By controlling history, they controlled perception. And by controlling perception, they controlled the galaxy. If the humans could destroy it, they wouldn't just be avenging Earth, they would be dismantling the very foundation of the Council's rule. "We only get one shot at this," said the veteran, their voice steady but edged with urgency. "The Council won't see us coming, but once we make our move, they'll throw everything they have at us. There's no backup plan. We either succeed or we vanish from history altogether." The others nodded, their faces grim but resolute. They all knew the stakes. This mission wasn't just for themselves. It was for the billions who had perished when Earth was destroyed, for the generations forced to wander as refugees, and for the children who deserved a future free from oppression. As the ship drew closer to its target, the tension became palpable. Every creak of the hull, every flicker of the lights felt like an omen. The pilot glanced at the veteran, who gave a curt nod. It was time. The ship slipped into the Council's territory. its cloaking systems engaged, its crew holding their breath. But then a warning light blinked on the console. The pilot's heart sank. A Council patrol ship had detected them, its sensors piercing through the cloaking field. Alarms blared as the crew scrambled to respond. The patrol ship was fast, its weapons already locking onto the intruders. The veteran barked orders, and the ship's gunners returned fire. In the chaos, it became clear that stealth was no longer an option. They would have to fight their way through. The battle was fierce, the ship's hull shuddering under the impact of enemy fire. But the crew fought with the desperation of a species with nothing left to lose. They outmaneuvered the patrol ship, disabling its engines and slipping away before reinforcements could arrive. For a moment, there was silence again. But it was a different kind of silence, one filled with the weight of what had just happened and what still. As they approached the Council's core world, the crew knew they had only hours, maybe minutes, before their presence was fully known. The archive loomed ahead, a massive structure orbiting a blue-green planet. It was beautiful in a way, its sleek design a testament to the Council's dominance. But to the humans, it was a symbol of everything they had lost. Inside the ship, the crew prepared for the final phase of their mission. They would infiltrate the archive, plant a device to erase its contents, and escape before the Council could stop them. It sounded simple in theory, but in practice, it was a suicide mission. The veteran looked at the crew, their gaze lingering on each face. "You all know what we're about to do," they said. "If anyone wants out, now's the time." No one moved. The pilot adjusted their headset. The engineer checked the device one last time, and the fighters loaded their weapons. They were ready, or as ready as they could ever be. The ship docked at a hidden port on the archive's outer ring. The crew disembarked, their movements quick and silent. Inside the structure, the halls were eerily quiet, the only sound the hum of machinery. They moved as one, their path lit by the faint glow of emergency lights. But every step brought them closer to danger. As they reached the heart of the archive, the veteran activated the device. Its hum filled the room, a low, menacing sound that seemed to vibrate through the walls. The device would take a few minutes to fully power up. Once it did, there would be no turning back. And then the alarm started. Red lights flashed, and the sound of boots echoed through the corridors. The Council's forces were coming. The crew took their positions, weapons ready, knowing they were outnumbered and outgunned. But they weren't afraid. They had come too far to turn back now. The veteran glanced at the device, its countdown ticking down. "Hold the line," they said. "No matter what happens, we finish this." As the first wave of enemies appeared, the crew opened fire. The battle was brutal, the air filled with the sounds of gunfire and shouts. But through it all, the device continued to hum, its countdown relentless. And then, just as the Council's forces seemed on the verge of overwhelming them, the device activated. A wave of energy surged through the archive, erasing centuries of data in an instant. The Council's history, their propaganda, their control, it was all gone. But the fight wasn't over. The crew still had to escape, and the Council wasn't about to let them go easily. As they fought their way back to the ship, the veteran turned to the pilot. "Get us out of here," they said. "Whatever it takes." The pilot nodded, their hands steady on the controls. But as they prepared to launch, a new warning light appeared on the console. More Council ships were closing in, and the crew's chances of survival were dropping by the second. Would they make it out alive? Or would their victory be the last act of defiance in humanity's long struggle for justice? The answers waited in the stars ahead. The ship's engines roared to life, their low vibrations trembling through the hull. Outside the viewport, the dark expanse of space was lit by the glowing edges of council ships rapidly closing in. The pilot's hands tightened on the controls, their jaw clenched as they calculated the best escape route. The rest of the crew braced for the inevitable. The hum of the ship's systems, the muffled sounds of alarms, and the weight of everything they'd just risked it all seemed to press down on them at once. "How much time do we have before they cut us off?" the veteran asked, their voice calm but urgent. They stood by the pilot, their eyes scanning the rapidly changing readouts on the control panels. "Not much," the pilot replied without looking back. "They're faster than us. We're going to have to get creative." The veteran nodded and turned to the rest of the crew. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Everyone strap in and stay sharp. This isn't over yet." As the ship surged forward, darting through the growing fleet of enemy vessels, the crew worked in tense silence. Each one knew their roles, their tasks honed through countless drills and missions leading up to this moment. But this wasn't a simulation. This was real. The fate of humanity's legacy rested on their survival, and every second brought them closer to either freedom or annihilation. In the engineering bay, the youngest member of the crew, a technician, frantically worked to stabilize the power systems. The device they'd activated had drawn an enormous amount of energy from the ship, leaving the engines dangerously overworked. Sweat dripped from their brow as they muttered calculations under their breath, their fingers flying over the controls. Engine powers fluctuating. They called out over the comms, "If we push too hard, we're going to blow." "Then keep us together," the pilot shot back. "We can't outrun them without full thrust." "I'm trying," the technician yelled, their frustration crackling through the speakers. The veteran moved to the comm panel and spoke calmly but firmly. "Focus. You've got this. Prioritize the primary systems and ignore the rest. We only need enough to keep moving." The technician took a shaky breath and nodded, even though no one could see them. They tuned out the chaos around them and focused on the task at hand, their hands steady despite the fear gnawing at their gut. Meanwhile, in the armory, two fighters were preparing for what felt like the inevitable boarding. If the council ships caught them, they wouldn't waste time with diplomacy. The fighters checked their weapons, their movements precise but hurried. "Do you think they'll come for us, or just blow us out of the sky?" one of them asked, their voice tight with nervous energy. "They'll try to take us alive," the other replied grimly. "They'll want to know how we got this far. But if it comes to that, well, we don't let them." The first fighter nodded, swallowing hard. They both knew the unspoken rule of the mission: no one gets captured. Not after what they'd done. Back on the bridge, the veterans studied the holographic map of the sector. The council's ships were closing in from all directions, their formation tightening like a noose. The pilot was doing everything they could to weave through the gaps, but the odds weren't in their favor. "We need a way out of this," the pilot muttered. "Some kind of distraction or a blind spot, anything." The veteran's eyes narrowed as they traced a faint path on the map. It was risky, but it might work. "What about here?" they said, pointing to a dense asteroid field just beyond the edge of the sector. "It's unstable, but it could slow them down. They'd have to break formation to follow us." The pilot hesitated for a fraction of a second, then nodded. "It's better than getting picked off out here." "Hold on." The ship banked sharply, its engines straining as it veered toward the asteroid field. The crew held their breath as they plunged into the maze of spinning rocks and debris. The asteroids were massive, their jagged surfaces glinting in the faint light of distant stars. Navigating through them was like threading a needle in a storm, but the pilot's focus was unshakable. The Council's ships hesitated at the edge of the field, their captains weighing the risk of pursuit against the possibility of losing their prey. For a moment, it seemed the plan might actually work. But then, one by one, the Council ships began to enter the field, their powerful shields deflecting the smaller debris as they closed the gap. "They're coming in," one of the fighters shouted over the comms. "They're not giving up." "Stay focused," the veteran replied, their tone steady but strained. "We're not out yet." As the pursuit continued, the ship's systems began to falter. Warning lights flickered across the control panels, and the hull groaned under the strain of near misses with the larger asteroids. In the engineering bay, the technician was doing everything they could to keep the ship from falling apart, but the damage was piling up. "I need more time," they shouted. "I can't keep this up if we keep taking hits." "We don't have time," the pilot snapped, their voice rising with the tension. "Just hold it together a little longer." The ship dodged another asteroid, its engines screaming in protest. The veteran gripped the edge of the console, their knuckles white. They had to think of something, anything to turn the tide. "Can we use the asteroids to our advantage?" the veteran asked. "Set a trap or block their path?" The pilot's eyes flicked to the sensors, then back to the viewport. "Maybe, but it'll take perfect timing. If we're off by even a second, then we make it work," the veteran interrupted. "It's our only chance." The pilot exhaled sharply and nodded. "Fine, but I'm going to need everyone on this." The veteran turned to the comms and relayed the plan to the crew. They would use the ship's remaining power to detonate one of the larger asteroids, creating a temporary barrier between them and the pursuing ships. It was a desperate move, but desperation was all they had left. As the crew worked together to set up the plan, the Council ships closed in, their weapons beginning to fire at the human ship. The blasts rocked the vessel, sending sparks flying from the control panels and rattling the crew. But they didn't stop. They couldn't stop. Finally, the technician's voice came over the comms. "The charges are ready, but we'll only get one shot at this." "Understood," the veteran replied. "Pilot, get up." The pilot's hands were steady as they guided the ship toward the edge of the asteroid field, keeping just ahead of the Council's weapons fire. The charges were set, the countdown ticking down. Every second felt like an eternity. And then, with a blinding flash, the charges detonated. The asteroid shattered into a massive cloud of debris, filling the space between the humans and their pursuers. The Council ship slowed, their sensors overwhelmed by the sudden chaos. On board the ship, the crew erupted into cheers, their relief palpable. But the veteran's expression remained grim. They knew this was only a temporary reprieve. The Council wouldn't stop hunting them, not after what they'd done. "Don't celebrate just yet," the veteran said. "We're not out of this fight." As the ship disappeared into the darkness of space, the crew's thoughts turned to what lay ahead. They had struck a blow against the Galactic Council, but the war for humanity's legacy was far from over. The galaxy was vast, and the Council's reach was long. But for the first time in 3,000 years, humanity had made them bleed, and they weren't done yet. The silence after the explosion was deafening. The crew sat in their seats, their bodies tense and unmoving, as if any sudden motion would shatter the fragile calm they had created. The pilot kept their eyes locked on the sensors, watching for any signs of pursuit through the cloud of debris they had left behind. For now, it seemed to have worked. The Council ships had fallen back, their formation disrupted by the chaos of the asteroid field. But the victory felt hollow. They all knew it was temporary. The veteran rose from their seat and moved toward the technician's station, where the youngest member of the crew was slumped against the console, their face pale and streaked with sweat. "Good work down there," the veteran said, their voice softer now. "We wouldn't have made it without you." The technician nodded weakly, their eyes still darting over the displays. "Systems are holding for now," they said, their voice trembling. "But the engines need a full reboot, and we're running low on power. If we push them again like that, I can't guarantee we'll stay in one piece. Do what you can. We're not out of this yet." The ship drifted further from the asteroid field, slipping into the shadow of a nearby gas giant. The crew used the brief respite to regroup and assess their situation. The armory was quiet as the fighters cleaned their weapons, their movements mechanical, their minds racing with the weight of what was ahead. In the galley, a few others gathered around a small table, their voices hushed as they shared water and rations. No one said it out loud, but they all knew what was coming. The Council wouldn't stop. They never stopped. The pilot turned to the veteran, their voice breaking the silence on the bridge. "We need a destination," they said. "Somewhere to regroup. If we just keep drifting, they'll find us eventually." The veterans studied the star map, their eyes narrowing as they considered their options. "We don't have the fuel for anything far," they said. "And anywhere we go, we risk drawing the Council's attention to innocent systems." "What about the old colonies?" someone suggested from the back of the room. It was the engineer, their face lit dimly by the flickering lights of the control panels. "There's nothing left there, but they're off the main trade routes. If we're lucky, the Council won't think to look." The veteran hesitated, their thoughts flickering to the ruins of humanity's past. The old colonies were graveyards, remnants of a time when humans had spread across the stars before the Council had turned on them. But the engineer was right. They were remote and abandoned, a place the Council would have no reason to patrol. "It's a risk," the veteran said finally, "but it might be our best shot. Set a course." The pilot nodded and began plotting the coordinates. The ship groaned as its engines powered up again, the faint vibrations a reminder of how fragile their vessel had become. As they accelerated away from the gas giant, the crew fell into a tense silence once more, each lost in their own thoughts. Hours passed as the ship moved through the empty expanse of space. The crew tried to rest, but sleep didn't come easily. In the quiet moments, memories of Earth's destruction crept into their minds. For some, it was the stories they had been told as children, tales of a home they had never seen but still longed for. For others, it was the first-hand memories of that final devastating day when the skies burned and the Council's fleet rained destruction upon their... "Got it!" the gunner exclaimed, a brief flicker of triumph breaking through the tension. But the victory was short-lived. For every ship they managed to slow, two more seemed to take its place. The Council's fleet was relentless, their movements precise and calculated. It was clear they had no intention of letting the humans escape this time. The pilot glanced at the veteran, their voice low but urgent. "We can't keep this up. They've got us pinned." The veteran didn't respond immediately. They were staring at the tactical map. Every escape route was blocked, every maneuver counted. But then, their eyes caught something, a faint signal on the edge of the map, barely detectable against the background noise. It wasn't Council, and it wasn't human. It was something else entirely. "What is that?" the veteran murmured, pointing at the anomaly. The technician leaned over the console, their fingers flying over the keys as they enhanced the signal. The readings were strange, ancient, almost but unmistakably artificial. "It's a structure," the technician said, their voice tinged with awe. "And it's massive, bigger than anything I've ever seen." The veteran's brow furrowed as they studied the data. The signal was originating from deep within an uncharted nebula, a place that no one, human or council, had explored. It was a risk, but it was also the only option. "Set a course for the nebula," the veteran said, their voice firm. "If they want us that badly, they'll have to follow us into the unknown." The pilot hesitated for a fraction of a second, then nodded. The ship banked sharply, its engines roaring as it changed direction. The council fleet adjusted immediately, their formation tightening as they pursued. As the ship approached the nebula, the view from the bridge changed. The stars faded into a swirling haze of colors, reds, purples, and golds, blending together in a mesmerizing but foreboding display. The sensors struggled to penetrate the dense clouds, the readouts flickering with interference. The veteran addressed the crew over the comms. "We're flying blind in here, but so are they. Stay sharp and be ready for anything." The ship plunged into the nebula, the swirling gases obscuring everything beyond the viewport. The crew worked in tense silence, their focus unshaken despite the unknown dangers lurking ahead. The council ships followed, their weapons firing blindly into the haze. One of their blasts grazed the human ship, sending a shudder through the hull. "We've lost aft shields," the technician called out, their voice tight with panic. "One more hit like that, and we're done for." "Keep us moving," the veteran said, their tone unwavering. "We need to reach that signal." Deeper into the nebula, the strange readings grew stronger. The ship's sensors finally managed to break through the interference, revealing a colossal structure ahead. It was ancient, its surface covered in intricate patterns and glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. It seemed to pulse with energy, as if alive. "What is that?" the gunner whispered, their voice barely audible. The veteran didn't answer. They were transfixed by the sight, their mind racing with possibilities. Whatever it wasn't human, and it wasn't council either. It was something older, something forgotten. As the ship approached the structure, the council fleet hesitated. Their formation faltered, the pursuing ships slowing as if uncertain. For the first time, the hunters seemed wary. "Why are they pulling back?" the pilot asked, their voice laced with confusion. The veteran's eyes narrowed. "Because they don't know what this is either, and they're afraid." The ship drew closer to the structure, its systems flickering as they were overwhelmed by the sheer energy emanating from it. The crew braced themselves as a low hum filled the air, growing louder with every passing second. The light from the structure intensified, casting eerie shadows across the bridge. And then, without warning, the ship's systems shut down completely. The lights flickered out, leaving the crew in darkness. The hum grew deafening, vibrating through the hull and into their very bones. "What's happening?" the technician shouted, their voice barely audible over the noise. Before anyone could answer, the light from the structure enveloped the ship, flooding every corner with a blinding brilliance. The crew shielded their eyes, their hearts pounding as the ship was pulled toward the source of the energy. The last thing the veterans saw before the light consumed them completely was the council fleet retreating, their ships vanishing into the nebula, as if fleeing from something far more terrifying than the humans they had been chasing. And then there was nothing. No sound, no movement, just an all-consuming silence, as if the universe itself had paused to watch what would happen. The blinding light faded, leaving the crew disoriented and gasping for air. The bridge was eerily silent, bathed in a faint golden glow emanating from the ship's consoles, now flickering back to life. Outside the viewport, the swirling nebula was gone. In its place was a vast, open space filled with colossal structures that defied comprehension. Towering spires floated aimlessly, their surfaces covered in shifting patterns of light and shadow. The veteran blinked, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. "Where are we?" the pilot whispered, their voice trembling. The technicians scanned the readouts, their hands shaking as they tried to re-establish the ship's systems. I don't know. None of this makes sense. The star charts, everything's scrambled." Before anyone could respond, a deep, resonant hum filled the air, vibrating through the ship. The crew froze as a voice calm yet unnervingly alien echoed around them. It wasn't coming through the comms. It seemed to speak directly into their minds. "You are not Council." The words sent a chill through the crew. The veterans stepped forward, their voice steady despite the tension. "No, we're not. We're humans." There was a pause, and the hum deepened. "Humans. The forgotten ones. You seek vengeance against those who erased your kind." The veterans' breath caught in their throat. "You know what they did. You saw it?" "We are the witnesses," the voice replied, reverberating with a weight that felt ancient. "We saw the Council's treachery. We saw your suffering. And we saw your resilience." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The structures around them began to shift, their glowing patterns accelerating as if responding to the conversation. The veteran took a step closer to the viewport, their heart pounding. "If you saw, then why didn't you intervene? Why let them destroy us?" The voice seemed to hesitate, the hum faltering for a moment. "Interference is forbidden. We exist to observe, not act. But now, the balance is threatened. Your return disrupts the order the Council has fought to maintain." The veteran's jaw tightened. The Council isn't fighting for balance. They're fighting to erase history, to erase us. We came back because we won't let them win. Not this time. The glowing patterns on the structures pulsed brighter, the hum rising in pitch. Your defiance has brought you here. And now, a choice must be made. Before the veteran could ask what the voice meant, the ship's systems surged, displaying a map of the galaxy. The map zoomed in on a cluster of Council-controlled systems, their territories marked in cold, unyielding lines. One of the glowing spires outside began to shift, its surface revealing an intricate crystalline device. "This is a key," the voice said. "It holds the power to collapse the Council's network, erasing their dominance. But the cost is great." The crew stared at the device, their minds racing. The veteran turned to the technician. "What kind of cost?" The technician's hands flew over the console as they analyzed the data. Their face paled. "It's a chain reaction. If we use this, it won't just disable their systems. It'll destroy the infrastructure of every advanced civilization, including ours. It'll set the galaxy back centuries." The bridge fell silent. The veteran's mind reeled. This was the ultimate weapon, a chance to level the playing field, to destroy the Council's grip on the galaxy. But at what price? Could they justify plunging countless worlds into chaos to ensure humanity's survival? The voice spoke again, quieter now, almost mournful. "Decide quickly. The Council approaches. They will not allow you to leave this place alive." As if on cue, The ship's sensors began to ping. The Council fleet had found them, their ships appearing at the edges of the strange space. The veteran clenched their fists, their heart pounding with the weight of the decision. Around them, the crew looked on, their eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. The veteran turned to the pilot. "How long until they reach us?" "Minutes, maybe less," the pilot replied. "We won't survive another fight." The veteran's gaze shifted to the device, its crystalline surface shimmering as if alive. Their mind raced through the possibilities. They had fought so hard to get here, to find something, anything that could give humanity a chance. But was this the answer? Then, as if sensing their hesitation, the voice spoke one final time. "Your legacy lies in your hands. Choose wisely." The veteran's decision came suddenly, a gut instinct they couldn't ignore. They stepped forward, placing their hand on the console. "Activate it," they said, their voice steady. The technician hesitated, their eyes wide. "Are you sure? Once it starts, there's no—" The veteran nodded. "We didn't come this far to fail. If we don't take this chance, the Council will destroy us and everything we stand for." The technician swallowed hard and pressed a series of commands. The device outside began to glow brighter, its patterns shifting rapidly. The hum grew deafening, and the ship trembled as waves of energy rippled outward. The Council ships accelerated, their weapons firing blindly toward the human vessel. But it was too late. The energy from the device surged through the strange space, cascading outward into the galaxy. The veteran watched as the map on the screen flickered, the Council's territories dissolving into chaos. But then, something unexpected happened. The crystalline device shattered, releasing a final burst of light that engulfed the ship. The veteran felt a strange sensation, as if time itself had stopped. The crew's voices faded, and everything went dark. When the light faded, the ship was drifting in familiar space. The nebula was gone, the strange structures vanished. The veteran blinked, disoriented, as the pilot checked the sensors. "We're back," the pilot said, their voice filled with disbelief. But something's changed. The tactical map reappeared, showing a galaxy transformed. Council's grip had been shattered, their systems plunged into disarray. But humanity's colonies had also reactivated forgotten signals and hidden enclaves sparking to life. The veterans stared at the map, a sense of awe and dread washing over them. The galaxy had been reset, its balance shifted in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. The crew exchanged uncertain glances, the weight of their actions sinking in. And then, from the depths of space, a new signal appeared, ancient, powerful, and entirely alien. The veterans' hearts sank as they realized the witnesses hadn't just observed. They had been waiting. "Whatever we've unleashed," the veteran said softly, "it's only the beginning." The crew sat in silence, staring at the map that had transformed before their eyes. The galaxy was unrecognizable, its intricate balance shattered by the chain reaction they had set in motion. The Council's dominion was gone, their systems plunged into chaos. But the signals from long-dormant human colonies, flickering like faint stars, offered a strange glimmer of hope. The veteran leaned heavily on the console, their breath uneven as they processed the enormity of what they had done. "We broke it," the gunner whispered, their voice trembling. "The galaxy, everything. We gave humanity a fighting chance," the veteran replied, though their voice lacked conviction. They turned toward the technician, who was furiously scanning the new signals. "How many human colonies are online? Can we contact them?" The technician nodded slowly, their hands working the controls. "Dozens, maybe more." Most are barely operational, but they're alive. They're waiting for something, someone to lead them. The weight of those words hung heavily in the air. The veteran closed their eyes, the faces of those they had lost flashing through their mind. They had fought so hard to bring humanity back from the brink, but now the responsibility of rebuilding felt almost crushing. The voice from the witnesses had been silent since the device shattered, but its final words lingered like an echo in the veteran's thoughts. Your legacy lies in your hands. They had made their choice, but what came next was uncertain. The pilot broke the silence, their voice steadying the room. We should regroup, find one of those colonies, and figure out what's left of our people. We didn't come this far to leave things unfinished. The veteran nodded, their determination returning. You're right. Plot a course to the nearest active colony. Let's see if there's still something worth fighting. As the ship set its course, the crew worked tirelessly to repair the damage and prepare for what lay ahead. The Council might have been weakened, but they were far from defeated. The galaxy was a fragmented puzzle, and the crew knew they were stepping into the unknown once again. When they arrived at the first colony, it was a somber sight. The planet's surface bore scars from centuries of neglect, its cities crumbling under the weight of time. But the signals were real. Survivors emerged from underground shelters, their faces etched with disbelief as they saw the ship land. The veterans stepped onto the surface, greeted by wary but hopeful eyes. These were humans who had lived in isolation, clinging to fragments of knowledge and memory passed down through generations. We're here to help, the veteran said, their voice carrying a promise. The Council is broken, but so is the galaxy. Together, we can rebuild. The survivors listened, their hope slowly rekindling as the crew shared their story. Word spread quickly, and other colonies began to reach out. The veteran ship became a beacon, rallying humanity's scattered remnants. The crew traveled tirelessly, connecting with other survivors, sharing resources, and uniting people under a common goal. But even as humanity began to rebuild, the veteran couldn't shake a lingering unease. The strange signal that had appeared after the device shattered still pulsed faintly in the background of their sensors. It was as if something was watching, waiting. The veteran pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the immediate task of survival. Months turned into years, and humanity slowly began to regain its footing. New alliances were formed, and old technologies were rediscovered. The Council, now fragmented and leaderless, posed less of a threat. Some of their former allies even sought peace, recognizing the futility of clinging to a broken empire. The veterans' crew became legends among the colonies, their story told and retold as a symbol of resistance and resilience. Yet the veteran themselves remained restless. They couldn't forget the witnesses, or the ominous feeling that humanity's victory might have come at a cost they didn't yet understand. One day, as the crew prepared to depart for another colony, the signal reappeared stronger this time. It pulsed steadily, beckoning them to a remote, uncharted region of space. The veteran gathered the crew on the bridge, their expressions serious. "We've ignored this for long enough," they said. "Whatever's out there, it's time we face it." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but nodded in agreement. They had faced countless dangers together, and they wouldn't turn back now. The ship's engines roared to life as it set a course for the unknown. The journey was long and tense, the signal growing stronger with each passing day. When they finally arrived, the sight before them was breathtaking, a massive structure, similar to the one in the nebula, but even more intricate. Its surfaces glowed with shifting patterns, and it radiated an energy that seemed to resonate with the ship itself. As they approached, the voice returned, calm and deliberate. You have done well to survive, to rebuild, but your journey is not over. The veterans stepped forward, their voice steady. What do you want from us? To witness your choices, the voice replied. To see if you will succeed where others have failed. The galaxy is yours to shape, but its balance remains fragile. The veteran frowned, their mind racing. Are you saying this has happened before? Other civilizations? Other people? The voice hesitated, then spoke with a gravity that sent chills through the crew. You are not the first to rise, and you will not be the last. But the legacy you leave behind will determine the future of this galaxy. Choose wisely. Before the veteran could respond, the structure pulsed with light, and the ship's systems lit up with data maps of ancient civilizations, records of long-forgotten histories, and technologies beyond their understanding. It was a gift, but also a responsibility. The veteran turned to the crew, their voice filled with determination. We've been given a second chance, not just for ourselves, but for the galaxy. Let's make sure we don't waste it. And so, humanity's journey continued, not as conquerors, but as stewards of a fractured galaxy, determined to rebuild a future that honored the past while forging a new path forward. The veteran and their crew became the architects of that future, their story a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of choice. The galaxy would never forget the humans who returned from the edge of extinction, not for revenge, but for